Coming up on Now See This. You'll witness a jumbo-sized rescue that's hanging by a thread. You'll see the long arm of the law getting a little bit longer. You'll watch as an Old West tradition receives a brand new twist.
Whoa, man!
And you'll have a front row seat as a record-breaking jump becomes a bone-breaking crash. Think you've seen it all? Now see this. The Statue of Liberty. Over the years, it has welcomed millions of immigrants and tourists to America. But today, one visitor from France will wear out his welcome. French political activist Thierry Devaux circles Lady Liberty's torch. He's there to protest the dangers of landmines in Europe and also fulfill a lifelong dream. But Thierry is no ordinary daredevil. For him, risking his life is art, and he's always found the statue irresistible. Now he plans to court Lady Liberty by landing on the torch's 3-foot-long catwalk, 375 feet above the ground. His approach is good, but then something goes wrong. Thierry overshoots the banister and his chute tangles in the torch. Now he's dangling by his harness 30 feet below the torch and 36 stories above the ground. The police respond quickly. Sergeant Mike Iannelli is first on the scene, and although laws have been broken, he's more concerned with saving lives.
First thing first, I wanted to find out if he was okay. At any point in time, his parasail could have become free, and the only thing that would have broken his fall was about 36 stories down, a brick landing.
Bystanders are amazed, but officers quickly clear the area below. The torch is decorative, and if it bends or breaks, Thierry, his gear, and any metal debris will slam into the earth at terminal velocity.
People were looking up, and I guess they thought it was part of a show.
A police helicopter moves in to begin a rescue attempt. But the chopper has to keep its distance. If the rotor wash dislodges the parachute, Thierry will plunge to the earth. They'll have to be rescued by hand. But Thierry's life is in experienced hands. Sergeant Iannelli is a veteran mountaineer. In fact, he's climbed the same alpine peaks that surround Thierry's hometown in northern France.
We sent one rope down to him to tie off on himself so that if his parasail should become loosened, we wouldn't actually lose him. And it took every bit of effort to get this man, who's probably about 180 pounds, almost 220 with his equipment, up about 30 feet onto the base of the torch.
With the metal catwalk groaning under the weight, Sergeant Iannelli and his colleagues stay strong and focus on saving Thierry's life. The last few feet are the most difficult and dangerous, but the death-defying Frenchman is finally pulled to safety. That's when officers learn the landing was only half his plan.
I wanted to make 3 acrobatic bungee jump from the torch of the Statue of Liberty. So actually the flight was to get the torch and to make my jumps. I had just to switch off my engine at the right time and be at the right place. I arrived quite fast and I couldn't catch the barrier which is around the torch.
For many people, this would be a moment of abject fear. But Thierry had a different reaction to dangling on the edge of death.
I didn't think I should die like this, but I was very, very, very cross with myself.
Thierry is escorted to the ground in handcuffs. The crowd cheers the police for their rescue efforts. Thierry may be unhurt, but Lady Liberty hasn't escaped unscathed.
The torch base, which is just brass and copper, isn't meant to hold that kind of weight. And to this day, it's permanently bent from the weight and the pressure that was exerted on it for the rescue.
But Sergeant Ianelli bears no ill will towards the French flyer. The two have become friends, and the New York cop appreciates his counterpart's joie de vivre.
I'm not a stuntman, I hate this word. I'm a sportman or an artist or what you want.
For his art, Thierry is fined and his visa is revoked. But obviously, things could have ended worse for him. He has accepted his punishment and swears that he never meant any disrespect.
I had a great admiration for the statue, for the lady. She was reaching out her arm to me and I had to do it.
In Santiago, Chile, a pleasant day at the zoo has turned unpleasant for a female elephant named Protea. During an attempt at mating, she was pushed across the spiked rocks and into this 10-foot moat by Jumbo, her frisky but clumsy male companion. It's the animal kingdom's version of a really bad date. But while the cause for her predicament may seem comical, the results could be deadly. Rescuers don't know the extent of her injuries, and she's been trapped without food or water for nearly 4 hours. Rescuers place a harness under her front legs and skillfully pull her on top of it. But getting a second strap under her stomach proves impossible. They don't want to lift her improperly. It could rip apart her internal organs or even kill her. But they have no choice. The crane starts to lift her. As Protea's front end rises, firemen throw hay bales underneath her head in case the strap breaks and she plummets back into the concrete pit. Lifting this enormous animal is a risky process. Elephants are not built to hang by their front legs, and Protea does not like it. Hurting and unaware that she's being rescued, Protea suddenly tips backwards, trying to free herself from the strap. Desperate to keep the 3-ton animal level, rescuers pull on a cord around her rear legs. The distressed Jumbo, held back by a rope, strains to go join his mate. But he can only cry out to her. The last yard is the most dangerous. If Protea falls now, she'll impale herself on the sharp rocks. Her flailing feet touch solid ground just in time. For a moment, she seems disoriented. Then she gets mad. Lashing out against the very apparatus that saved her, she struggles to break free. Rescuers don't dare get close enough to the thrashing elephant to unfasten the straps themselves. It's up to the crane operator to help Protea out. He slowly works the loops toward the ground. Fortunately, this girl is a quick learner. As the straps fall, she steps her way back out of them to safety. She's finally free. Thankfully, Protea suffered only minor head injuries, and she recovers fully. They say elephants never forget, and there's no doubt Protea will remember this ordeal for the rest of her life. She and Jumbo kiss and make up and agree that from now on, they'll try to have safer sex. With a box cutter in one hand and a noose around his neck, this man threatens to leap off a 200-foot bridge over the Bosphorus Straits of Turkey. But who is he?
Let me explain who I am. I am the Doctor of Parliament.
The Istanbul police are not political experts, but they can tell he's lying and crazy. The noose he's fashioned won't just kill him. It could decapitate him. The deranged man holds police at bay as he rattles off a bizarre version of his profession.
I am the doctor of the Prime Minister. He had a runny nose and a flu. I gave him a doctor's report.
His take on history?
One day Cleopatra and Katrina of Russia were invited into a tent. Stay away.
And Turkish politics.
The mathematics of the parliament is all wrong. If the Prime Minister is removed, the mathematics will be correct.
But if his words are incoherent, his actions are violent and unpredictable. One moment he courts the camera crew's attention, only to turn on them.
Pull that thing away from me. Pull it away.
All the while making threats and babbling nonsense.
I'm going to hang myself because I don't like the salt water in the sea. I'm going to hang myself. That's why you won't find 1 gram of salt water in my body.
Just off camera, the reporter tries to reason with him, but it only provokes the response everyone is loathing: the suicide jump.
Why don't you come over on this side and take it easy?
I'm not coming.
The man lowers himself down. If he lets go, the rope will go taut, his head will be yanked off, and his body will plunge into the inky water below.
Oh God, save me. Pull, pull.
In a moment of clarity, he seems to realize his predicament, and it scares him sane. 30 seconds ago, he was lunging at these police. Now he wants to live, and they're his only hope. Several pairs of hands drag the rope up, grab him, and finally hoist the man onto solid ground, where he blames Turkey's most famous newscaster for his botched attempt.
Rihu Muhtar gave me the rope to hang myself.
Authorities will later decide to close the bridge to pedestrians, just as this man decided, at the point of no return, that losing his mind is no reason to lose his life.
The final race here in the Oklahoma land race, where you need to be. Look at this right here. Whoa, man, hold on.
This may look like something out of the Old West, but it's neither old nor out west. It's the National Championship Chuck Wagon Races in the Ozark mountain town of Clinton, Arkansas.
I'm going to be honest with you, I'm not certain what did happen right there.
It's wild, unpredictable, and out of control.
It's a dangerous race. You think about it, you think a lot about it. Right before you come to the line, they're dragging a team off, and they've got the ambulance out there, and they're loading the guys up, and you're next.
17 years ago, Dan and Peggy Oaf began the races to celebrate the Old West. Most of the year, their 600-acre ranch is a pastoral paradise. But every Labor Day weekend, it becomes a huge tourist event, drawing up to 20,000 spectators, participants, and even corporate sponsors. There are mule team races, mounted horse events, and even a traditional bronco riding contest, where just getting into the saddle can be more entertaining than the ride. But the crowd favorite is still the chuck wagon races because they're fast, furious, and more than a little dangerous.
When you start, you forget about the danger and you just try to make it around the track and try to beat the guy next to you.
But with the severity of some wrecks, you better think twice before even approaching the starting line.
It's not for a novice. If you're going to enter, you better be tough and you better know what you're doing, because a greenhorn does not need to participate.
You don't have to be crazy to participate, but it helps. And unlike the 1800s, you don't even have to be a man, according to one of the race's true pioneers.
I was not actually the first woman to drive in the chuck wagon races. However, I was part of the first all-girl team.
And the women can be just as competitive as the men.
About 2 or 3 years ago, we crowned our first national champion, who was a woman.
Peggy's given up competing since having kids, but not Dan, who should get a prize for his persistence. Dan usually finishes last.
I feel like I'm still competitive, but I've entered them all. I've never won.
But that's much better than not finishing at all. It may look hard on the animals, but they usually walk away unharmed. As for the people, that's another story.
Here at the ranch, last year I think 22 ambulance calls and 2 helicopter calls, but nobody's seriously hurt.
The chuck wagon races make Dan and Peggy just enough money to do it again next year. But they aren't concerned about getting rich, because it offers something money can't buy.
When you have probably 10,000 people spend the night with you, and 3,000 of them are all on horses and having a good time, it's quite a party.
On the freeways of Southern California, one driver has already had a full night.
It started as a routine traffic stop. That's when the pursuit was on.
Minutes ago, Deputy John Lucy saw this woman acting erratically. Following his instincts, he tried to pull her over, and she nearly ran him down. The suspect fled this attempted hit and run, only to find more trouble.
If you look closely, it appears there is some front-end damage to the car.
On the freeway, she sideswiped the center divider doing nearly 100 miles per hour. Now her front left tire is history. Her airbags are deployed, and the underside of her car is tossing sparks across the pavement every time she hits a bump. It's strange, women almost never lead cops on high-speed chases. But this is just one of the bizarre details officers in pursuit notice. Another red flag is that she isn't concentrating on her driving.
Occasionally, the suspect will lean out of the window and start making references to the police chopper.
She seems to be taunting them. But more disturbing is the fact that she won't stop, despite the way she's destroying her car mile by mile.
A lot of sparks now. It was only a matter of time before the axle made contact with the pavement there.
Authorities have to believe she's either intoxicated, mentally unstable, or both. She seems oblivious to the fact that tiny flaming shards of metal are erupting from under her chassis. As she speeds into a higher traffic area, all police can do is keep other motorists away from her and wait for an opening.
CHP officers doing a really good job of keeping vehicles from getting on the freeway.
Her speed's slow as she hits city streets. Her car looks like it'll give out soon, but patience is no longer an option. It's 8 p.m., and just a few blocks away, the streets are full of people out for the night. Officers have to stop this chase before a bystander gets hurt.
Making our way eastbound on Colorado, and they pit the car right there.
Watch it again. The lead officer performs a perfect maneuver that spins the suspect and stalls her car. But she isn't even close to done. Wedged in, the woman leans on the accelerator, spinning her tireless wheel. Now that they're face to face, things get more dangerous. She could be armed. She could try to run another cop down. One officer quickly breaks the window, and when she won't come out, blasts her with a face full of pepper spray.
This is a dangerous situation here because they don't know if the suspect is armed.
Only then, after nearly 30 miles of speeding, crashing, sparking, and spinning, is she ready to give up. Facing charges of assault with a deadly weapon, this suspect has claimed she's mentally unfit to stand trial. Maybe it's true. But when she took her insanity out on the streets, police did what it took to stop the madness. The 4th of July at the San Diego County Fair. Daredevil Bubba Blackwell will attempt to break his own record by jumping 22 cars. Bubba rides a Harley-Davidson, known for their bone-rattling power, not their jumping ability.
Another day, another record.
But the unthinkable happens. 50,000 stunned fans leave the fair not knowing if he'll survive the night. Born and raised in Alabama, Bubba turned his love for motorcycles into a high-flying career. Racing bikes wasn't wild enough, so Bubba started getting his thrills by performing dazzling jumps before screaming crowds. But in over 100 attempts, he only crashed once. Bubba's playful personality, good looks, and remarkable skill on a bike have earned him legions of fans. And he keeps them by pushing the limits, breaking every record in the books, even those of his boyhood idol, Evel Knievel.
Good luck to you, Bubba. Yeah.
This night is like any other. Weeks of planning and preparation come to a head as Bubba roars down the dirt track toward the ramp. But even his wife can sense something's off.
I've seen him enough to know that, it wasn't good. And I don't know if he could hear the bike like I could, or whether it was, like he said, lack of traction or what, but I just didn't hear the RPMs.
Bubba is only 2 miles per hour shy of his target speed, but that translates into 18 inches short of the mark. His limp body cartwheels down the ramp like a rag doll. For days, his life hangs in the balance, but 2 weeks later, Bubba isn't just out of danger. He's giving interviews.
You can't count old Bubba out. You ain't no telling what that kid's gonna do.
But what went wrong? Clearly, Bubba never had enough speed to carry him over the 140-foot steel canyon. So why didn't Bubba just check his speedometer?
I don't use a speedometer, which, I'm probably gonna have to rethink that option. I broke my pelvis in 3 places. I broke 6 vertebrae in my back, 1 in my neck, broke 9 ribs, punctured both lungs.
The spill may have broken his body, but not his spirit or his faith.
God still performs miracles.
Less than a year later, Bubba is back on the circuit and confident as ever.
As far as fear is concerned, I don't believe in it.
And even after this horrific crash, he has no plans to retire.
I do believe that anything worth having has a price. Mine is I might get hurt. The biggest fear that I have is growing old saying I wish that I would have.
This is not a quiet conversation among friends. A woman whose home life is falling apart has parked her car on a bridge in Kansas and is threatening to jump off. The 40-foot fall could kill her instantly. Now, Deputy Sheriff Robert Burkhead is going to have to be part cop and part therapist to stop her.
I introduced myself, and I just asked her directly if she was considering throwing herself over, hurting herself today, and she said, yes, I am.
Another officer stands off camera while Burkhead positions himself between the woman and the 4-story drop. He uses words and reason to try and change her mind.
She asked me if I could give her some water. I told her I didn't have any. She said, okay. She seals up her water bottle, and she acted like she was going to get something out of her car.
But Burkhead suspects the woman has a more self-destructive plan in mind, and it's a race to the wall. Burkhead barely catches the woman, but is pulled over the edge. The force of the fall is too much for both to hang on. Her body is launched into the water below, but Burkhead holds on with one arm.
I started calling for help. Officer Doug Pryor and my civilian observer came over to me.
The 2 men bolt over to Burkhead and quickly haul him up.
I didn't know if I was going to be able to make it up by myself because I really didn't have the strength. My adrenaline and everything was gone. I turned around and looked for Officer Pryor, and he'd already jetted off down the bridge. The first thing on my mind, where was she at? I looked over and she was floating herself face down in the river. Every once in a while she'd pop up and go back down.
Burkhead's 911 call to dispatch records the chaos.
She jumped over the bridge. Mid-4, I'm sorry, you advised she jumped over the bridge? She's floating down the river. 1, you advised Maze 4 is in the water now? 10-4.
It would be easy for Deputy Burkhead to stay put and nurse his mangled arm. But there's no time for that. Officer Pryor can barely swim.
I ran down the bridge to assist Officer Pryor.
Officer Pryor's walkie-talkie records the rescue.
How far downstream are they now? We got her. She's 100 yards upstream. 10-4.
Burkhead arrives just as they reach shore.
I wrestled with her briefly and was able to tow her back into shore. We had a short confrontation there, and I was able to place her into custody.
Remarkably, the woman walked away with nothing more than a bruised knee. But looking back, Burkhead realizes that had he not been there, the woman would have landed on the rocks below.
It was really sort of a miracle because the momentum and the angle we went over swung her into the deeper water.
1023. Today, Deputy Burkhead is grateful to have his life and the title of hero, thanks to a fellow officer and some extraordinary luck.
I think that she had her guardian angel on her side and I had mine on mine. That in itself was a miracle.